Hey, how's it going, guys? So we're back with more SCP Foundation video. If you're new channel, welcome. So we already watched one video by TheVolgun about SCP-49, which is the Plague Doctor, and we're gonna be checking out two more videos that talk about the Plague Doctor. One video is going to be by the Exploring series, and the other one is by SCP Explained, Story and Animation. The story and animation video was recommended to me by one of my viewers. The Exploring series was just something I pulled up because the Exploring series has been a great source of information and lore. So far, what I learned about the Plague Doctor is it's sentient. It acts like a real medieval doctor. It can speak English and French, and it's trying to cure the pestilence, which is a severe plague. And basically, the Plague Doctor constantly wants like human subjects to experiment on, but however he only gets like animals to like satisfy his need to like experiment and work. But however, the ones that the humans that he experiment on are like literally void of life, and they're reanimated, and they're they are kind of aggressive because they will attack. And the Plague Doctor sees it as the cure from pestilence. But we'll just see what is explained in these two videos. Some of it will be repeated facts, some of it will be repeated information, but still, maybe there's something new that wasn't explained in the TheVolgun video. So without anything else, let's just jump right into it.
SCP-049 Plague Doctor. The Great Plague was one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, killing tens of millions of people in the Eastern Hemisphere, and reshaping history in the process. Cities affected by the plague would often hire plague doctors to come in and treat as many people as possible.
The Great Plague.
These doctors would often be inexperienced and lack professional training, and would rarely cure anyone, but merely record how many people were affected by the plague. In the 1600s, plague doctors began wearing special outfits, consisting of an overcoat, a mask, and a long beaked nose. The nose portion would contain herbs, spices, and flowers, which the doctors believe would prevent the sickness from entering their bodies.
Oh, so that's why it's like that. I mean, I didn't even know that. I just thought that was like a specific design to their mask, like mimicking a like crow or raven or something like that. But I did not know that particular design was to contain something. Okay, well, I learned something new today.
Basic summary should provide the necessary background info for SCP-049, a highly anomalous plague doctor. While it shares some similarities with the historical plague doctor, the differences make it one of the most intriguing of the SCPs. An investigation into a string of disappearances in a French town led authorities to a local home, where they discovered a man dressed as a plague doctor, along with a number of hostile, reanimated corpses.
Yeah, that was mentioned in the
police
TheVolgun
terminated
video.
the hostiles, while the Plague Doctor watched and took notes in his journal. Afterwards, the Foundation became notified and took the entity into containment. The entity, designated SCP-049, claims to have originated in 15th century France, and speaks a number of languages, notably medieval French and English. The Foundation discovered that, although it possesses a humanoid skeletal structure, the Plague Doctor outfit is actually part of its physiology, apparently having grown out of its body, including the robes, gloves, and mask. Interestingly, SCP-049's mask is not the same as the traditional Plague Doctor mask, but is instead reminiscent of a Zani mask from Italian theater.
Oh, that's new.
SCP-049 is generally cordial and respectful to Foundation personnel, originally appreciative to be amongst fellow doctors. It soon becomes quite clear that 049 is obsessed with discovering a cure for the so-called pestilence, also referred to as the Scourge and the Great Dying.
Yeah, he's still fighting
When asked
the Great Plague.
The bubonic plague, it remarks that it doesn't know what that is. 049's most anomalous trait is that its physical touch causes instant termination of biological functions in any living organism.
Yeah, that's
This
really
is especially
terrifying.
dangerous due to 049's behavior when it believes it detects the presence of the pestilence. When it believes an organism to be infected, 049 will kill it with a touch, and then proceed to experiment on the corpse. Using an anomalously expansive doctor's bag that's always found on its person, 049 will perform a variety of crude surgical procedures, including rearranging organs and appendages, and introducing strange fluids to the body. While not always successful, most
That's
of the
a cool
time these
image.
procedures will cause the corpse to reanimate. The reanimated corpses seem to retain none of their prior memories or mental faculties, and possess only basic motor functions.
Yeah, so basically he's just creating
These entities
zombies.
are generally very passive if left undisturbed, but can retaliate if provoked, or if 049 directs them to attack something, becoming exceptionally aggressive. 049 will write down all of the results in its journal in an unknown language, commenting that they are now cured, although their biological functions are vastly different than what our science currently understands. Sometimes, 049 will experiment multiple times on the same corpse, reanimating it more than once. It continues to ask for more subjects to experiment on, especially humans, as it believes it continually grows closer to a perfect cure. So, what is the pestilence? While it's never explicitly explained in the article, there are implications and theories. We can likely rule out any sort of biological contagion or infection, at least as far as we understand it, as 049 claims that the pestilence is the only ailment that exists in the world of men. One of the popular theories is that the pestilence is death, or mortality, as it would be a problem that affects practically every living creature.
That would
Although
explain the
biological
reanimation.
functions of the reanimated corpses aren't very well understood by the Foundation, it's possible that they are biologically immortal, effectively cured of death. Unfortunately, there are a number of holes in this theory based on 049's words. When first discussing the plague, he tells the doctor to think beyond amateur terms like life and death, and to expand his horizons. Later, when discussing one of the reanimated corpses, he explains that the creature is now clean and is unable to spread the pestilence. Overall, 049
Oh, I
seems
just
to throw
noticed
around
that
the term death
the body
fairly
has
loosely,
blades
for him to not
through
just
it.
say that's what the pestilence is. Another theory is that the pestilence is instead aging, which does fit slightly better, although it perhaps makes even less sense when considering the idea of spreading the pestilence.
Oh yeah, there's that. Yeah, makes sense.
Yet another theory relates the pestilence to SCP-2718, a terrifying cognitohazard that causes those who believe it to experience an everlasting torture upon death.
Oh, that's an anomaly
The
I don't know.
elimination of this disease would certainly be a noble effort, but it's one of the most highly classified SCPs known to the Foundation, with even the O5 Council not aware of it.
Really?
It's pretty unlikely then so many individuals would be affected by it, including the head doctor studying 049, whom 049 suddenly decided was infected with it.
Yeah, that was in the
Other
Volgun video.
theories include human emotion, but testing on animals wouldn't make much sense then, entities being on the verge of death, which 049 can detect somehow, or something else mimetic or not properly understood by humans. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter what the pestilence is, and it's just as likely that 049 is simply delusional. As 049 continues to become one of the most popular articles on the SCP Wiki, theories and discussions will likely continue to crop up. Really, what separates 049 from many other dangerous humanoid anomalies is its personality.
Because
Rather
it's
than
sentient
being
and it
some
can
monstrous,
cooperate.
inexplicable entity that wishes for death and destruction, 049 is generally sociable and eloquent, and for the most part seems to genuinely want to help humanity. Although
in
he
unique
did end
ways.
up killing the main doctor involved in studying him, he is regretful that the pestilence apparently took hold in him, and was glad to be able to cure him of it. Perhaps the pestilence is very real, and 049 is one of our best hopes of defeating it. Perhaps 049 is like many of the plague doctors of old, little more than charlatans. It does seem clear, though, that whatever 049 thinks the pestilence is, it believes that it is the cure.
Okay. From 49. You say things too simply, Doctor. Expand your horizons. Life and death, sickness and health. These are amateur terms for amateur physicians. Oh yeah, this was in the interview from TheVolgun. And that is the pestilence and nothing else. Make no mistake, they were very ill, all of them. Dr. Ham, you think you cure those people? Indeed, my cure is most effective. But they're void of life and everything. That's why. All right, that was exploring the SCP Foundation 049 Plague Doctor. Now we're going to be jumping into the next video, which is everything you need to know, and it's by SCP Explains Story and Animation. Let's begin.
SCP-049 is a fascinating bundle of contradictions. SCP-049 is a fascinating bundle of contradictions. Arguably, he's the Hannibal Lecter of the anomalous world. He's educated, refined, and cultured, a scientific man with scientific goals, capable of communicating eloquently in both English and medieval French. As anomalies go, he's one of the more cooperative ones contained by the SCP Foundation, willing to understand reason and even showing a small degree of respect for his fellow researchers. And yet, despite all this intelligence and refinement, underneath his dark organic cloak, a heart of deep red violence steadily beats. He's capable of ending life with a mere touch, causing all biological functions in the body to simply cease through means that are still unknown to science, thanks to a series of inconclusive autopsies on SCP-049's unaltered victims. Not only is killing easy in a physical sense for SCP-049 with a few notable exceptions, it's also been just as easy on his conscience. Such is the danger of the man or monster who believes unshakably that his goals are righteous. Any moral crime is permissible if done in service of seeing them through. And for those who die at SCP-049's hand, an even greater indignity awaits. His inhuman experiments, the gateway to a second life as an abominable crime against nature, a glob of malignant spit in the eye of God. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves here, students. We've mentioned SCP-049 countless times in passing before. Some of his strange tales, his interactions with other anomalies like SCP-682, and even with some of your questions and theories about this bone-masked scientific madman. And yet, he still remains a mystery. Perhaps to truly understand this fascinating walking question, we need to return to the beginning and give the classified files behind the Plague Doctor a closer look. Like many of the infamous anomalies discovered by the SCP Foundation, the files indicate that the discovery itself was first triggered by a series of mysterious disappearances in the sleepy town of Montauban, out in southern France. People across races, classes, ages, and genders were simply falling off the map, suggesting a highly indiscriminate assailant. Little did the Foundation know, in the beady avian eyes of their killer, they all had an extremely important commonality. Each and every one of them was infected with the pestilence, the invisible scourge, the great dying. Their killer was the only one with the proper diagnostic mind to even notice the infection. He was the only one who could save the world from this insidious, unseen threat. And then the SCP Foundation discovered his laboratory. The Plague Doctor had been doing his delicate work in an abandoned house on the edge of town. The kind of place that gets whispered about in local rumors. A bad place. A cursed place.
Makes sense.
Little did they know, it was only the latest in a long line of covert research centers for this singularly inspired medicine man. While some of the details were a little foggy in his memory, he'd been carrying out his work for a little over 400 years now, moving from place to place, causing strings of disappearances wherever he showed up. In his own words, he's an extremely well-traveled man. And still the cure for the blasted pestilence continued to evade him. He sat in that decrepit Montalban house, surrounded by groaning, writhing abominations of his own creation, taking meticulous notes.
Yeah, so basically this man is just capable of just making zombies. So, like I said, I think that's how he thinks that that is the cure to the pestilence. To be void of life, so that way if none of the organs function or anything like that, then there's no way that it could be like passed on, like the pestilence could be passed on to another person or anyone could be infected. So that's what he wants to do, just turn everyone into reanimated zombies pretty much.
Nothing would break his concentration, not even the strangers in the black tactical gear with large guns kicking in his front doors. His many cured patients didn't take kindly to the intrusion on their treatment and decided to swarm the interlopers. What followed was a violent struggle between the intruders and the cured, resulting in several of the intruders injured and all of the cured dead once more. During all this chaos, the Plague Doctor never once stopped taking notes. When he was finished with his sentence, he willingly submitted to capture by this mysterious SCP Foundation. After all, when he told them about the true nature of his mission, they would of course see reason and allow him to continue
this fact
his research.
Is consistent.
Sure, he may have committed a few crimes against nature on the way, but he was working in service of loftier ideals. You can only imagine his profound relief when he was first interviewed by SCP Foundation researcher Dr. Raymond Ham in Site 85. He was in the presence of fellow scholars, people of science. He worried at first that he'd been captured by some group of common street scoundrels, when in fact, the hands of Providence had delivered him into the perfect place to continue his research. The warm light of fate was now smiling on him after so long languishing in the dark.
If he was captured by a different group and there were no doctors, no men of science or anything, he would definitely been very violent, very aggressive, and try to break out. And it would all gone to hell.
All he needed to do was allow the scientists around him to conduct tests on his own body, while he conducted tests on others. At first, the SCP Foundation believed he was an anomalous human being wearing a costume, but they soon discovered that he was something very different. What they thought was a mask was actually an outgrowth of his skull, a kind of insect-like exoskeleton. The robes were also a component of his body, a kind of thick hide that developed over the years. The thickness of the hide itself also made him impervious to a great deal of physical damage. Despite his politeness, research notes on the Plague Doctor indicated that Foundation personnel found interacting with him uncanny. There was an oddly eerie quality to him, something indistinguishable that just felt off. The Foundation also found that the Plague Doctor, whom they initially addressed as Doctor rather than SCP-049 out of a sense of mutual respect, also came with a number of strange personal effects. These included a long pointing stick, similar to the ones used by medieval Plague Doctors to touch things without fear of contamination. This stick was soon confiscated. It didn't possess any anomalous qualities, but the Plague Doctor had a tendency to gesture grandly with it as he spoke, and the Foundation feared he absent-mindedly take someone's eye out with it if he wasn't careful. The other two personal effects that the Plague Doctor prized greatly was his old-fashioned medical bag and the notebook that he obsessively recorded his observations with. The medical bag, which seemed to exhibit anomalous properties, contained a mix of archaic medical tools as well as some that the Foundation has been unable to identify. It's through the tools in this bag that the Plague Doctor is able to create instances of SCP-049-2. As we alluded to earlier,
what is he going to use
the
those
Plague
on?
Doctor can kill with a touch, but that's only part of what he does to his victims. After causing all their biological functions to cease, he takes the tools out of his medical bag and begins performing crude surgery on their corpse, including using a syringe to inject an unknown anomalous liquid into their flesh. While the specifics on the Plague Doctor's modifications can vary from victim to victim, the result is often the same. They're converted into strange, shambling abominations that aren't capable of any kind of higher thought. For the most part, their movements are extremely basic and limited. However, if they're provoked, they can become frighteningly violent, more than capable of killing an armed Foundation guard if they don't remain alert during the engagement. The SCP Foundation was given a unique opportunity to understand more about SCP-049's twisted experiments. As part of his conditions for containment, they agreed to provide the diabolical doctor with a number of fresh test subjects. The doctor was eager to continue his work, and through watching him work, the SCP Foundation could learn a great deal more about him.
Poor Class
Though
D
we
subjects.
wouldn't even pretend that the Plague Doctor's work has ever been enjoyable to watch. They presented him with some live subjects and a much greater number of mammalian corpses. He would spend several days working intensely on each one, then documenting his findings in his precious notebook. As a mark of respect for the Foundation scientists around him, the Plague Doctor was more than eager to share his research with them and compare notes. He was always a talkative one, perhaps just as excited to discuss his experiments and theories with like-minded scholars after so many years of working alone. Here are 4 notable instances. First, the Plague Doctor was presented with a live D-Class specimen. He thanked the Foundation greatly for this gift, then set about his work. He asked the unaware D-Class several questions about his medical history while retrieving tools from his bag, before quickly touching and killing the man. He performed extensive modifications on the D-Class corpse, and when he was resurrected as an SCP-049-2 instance, he was barely recognizable as his original form. He was a bizarre, flailing creature, constantly groaning and gasping from the oblong-shaped hole that the Plague Doctor had carved into his chest.
Jesus.
While performing this horrifying work, the Plague Doctor eagerly remarked to the observing researchers that the cure appears to be extremely effective. Next, he was provided the corpse of a recently deceased goat, which he also expressed gratitude for. After performing surgery on the creature, it was successfully resurrected into a bizarre SCP-049-2 instance. However, the Plague Doctor readily admitted that this definitely wasn't his best work, commenting,
"The disease was still in its nascent stage. My veterinary practice is rudimentary, but the patient responded well to the procedure."
Next, he was provided the corpse of a recently deceased orangutan. The Plague Doctor was delighted by this, commenting that, given primate similarities to human physiology,
that
this
was in
would be the
TheVolgun
next best thing from a true
video.
human test subject. However, this research became surprisingly fraught. He killed and reanimated the beast 4 different times, seemingly unsatisfied with the result each time. And when he failed to reanimate the creature a 5th time, he seemed disconcerted. In a debriefing discussion, the Plague Doctor said,
"I have learned so much from this, though I fear my early optimism was misplaced. I hadn't yet come across such a stumbling block on my road to the cure."
So right now, out of all 3 videos, including this one, TheVolgun, the one we just saw by the Exploring series, and this, many of the notes and story parts of the story are consistent, and they do match, like how they found him and how the doctor was taking notes, and he went like cooperatively with SCP Foundation and the test subjects on mammals, and very happy that he got orangutan because it's very similar to the human body. So everything really does match. There's just a few things I did learn that are new, like how the black robe is pretty much impervious to like physical contact. Like it's almost like bulletproof and like all that. So it's really cool to see the consistency. So that way, you know, it's pretty much true and accurate.
More subjects like this would do a great deal in advancing my research.
Next, it was provided with the corpse of a recently deceased cow. This irritated
bovine.
SCP-049, who wanted test subjects who were physiologically closer to humans. Still, despite his frustration, he continued to work. He took only brief breaks to enjoy a meal of hard cheese, salted pork, and thin crackers. Tests showed that SCP-049 didn't require sustenance to survive, but he enjoyed the act of eating and found that it helped him with his work. He embalmed the cow, rearranging its organs, and even inverted its head. However, this didn't impede his work. He injected it with a variety of liquids, which he described as the essence of the humors. When asked to elaborate further on this, he said,
"The pestilence may bring about a systemic imbalance. In such a case, before true healing can begin, one must find the humors in balance or the body will reject the cure. This is, of course, elementary knowledge for the practical physician. I would have thought to have learned this during your education." After being provided a working cattle prod to induce a little electricity into the equation, the Plague Doctor successfully reanimated the mutant cow. From here,
things started to go downhill. Dr. Ham decided to conduct another interview with SCP-049, hoping to get into the finer details of his scientific process. However, they hit some major roadblocks. SCP-049 seemed to be unable to actually articulate the true nature of the pestilence or his process in seeking the cure. Even his notebook wasn't written in any known language and proved impossible to decipher. As the interview went on, the Plague Doctor seemed to become increasingly distressed, insisting on the importance of his work to helping the human race prosper and survive this terrible plague. All he needed in exchange was more test subjects. The practiced civility that had been built up between the Plague Doctor and the SCP Foundation crumbled in 2017 after a tragic incident in the Plague Doctor's cell with Dr. Ham. When he entered to perform a very standard interview with the Plague Doctor, the doctor appeared to become anxious and asked Dr. Ham if he was feeling well today.
Yep, here it comes.
Dr. Ham thought nothing of it and tried to continue the interview, but by that point, it was already too late. The Plague Doctor had come to believe that Dr. Ham was infected with the pestilence. And, of course, there was only one cure. The Plague Doctor gave Dr. Ham his touch of death. The man died instantly, and the Plague Doctor immediately went about turning his corpse into another SCP-049-2 instance. Because Ham was killed so quickly, he didn't have time to activate his emergency security signal, meaning what was left of him wasn't discovered until 3 hours later. Guards and researchers were horrified to see one of their own turned into a mindless, deformed monster by an anomaly they all thought they could trust. Following this tragic incident, Dr. Theron Sherman chastised the Plague Doctor for this appalling breach of trust and the cold-blooded murder of Dr. Raymond Ham. The Plague Doctor, in a state of increasing distress, insisted that Ham was infected, and he did all that he could to cure him. And while the Plague Doctor insisted a certain level of scientific distance from his subject, it seemed that deep down, he regretted the loss of a friend and fellow researcher in his endless quest against the pestilence. After this incident, the Plague Doctor truly became SCP-049. He lost all of his privileges and now remains under lock and key in Site-19. Whenever he's transported, he's kept in shackles and supervised by a number of armed guards. After discovering that the scent of lavender has a pacifying effect on him, it's regularly used as a tranquilizer against him during engagements.
Oh yeah, that's right.
This is how
lavender.
A cordial ally can become just another prisoner in the eyes of the SCP Foundation. In a summary interview after the Dr. Ham incident, Dr. Elijah Itkin asked if 049 had any regrets about the incident, noting that he seemed oddly mournful. 049 paused before replying,
"Mourn. Perhaps I had not thought that. It is lamentable that a fellow doctor became infected.
That was in the interview.
Work continues. Regrettable as it was, Dr. Ham's death provided important insight. Living human subjects are the only way to proceed forward, I am decided. My cure is of little use on dead flesh, and I have gleaned all I can from your generous supply of corpses. My desires turn towards tending to those still living who suffer from the disease."
Dr. Itkin replied that 049 would be disappointed on that front. He just laughed in response and replied,
"Oh, Doctor, I wouldn't be so sure."
Now go check out SCP-049 What Actually Is the Pestilence? The Plague Doctor Questions and Theories, and SCP-049 Going Home for more on the enigmatic Plague Doctor SCP-049.
I might have to check those out. Okay, so checking out 2 more videos of 049, the Plague Doctor. What I really like is those 2 videos. Mostly everything literally was consistent with what I saw in TheVolgun. Even the interview, the words and the death of Dr. Ham, and his excitement when it came to the orangutan, and also what was provided as experiments, the rabbit, the goat, and also the cow or bovine. So the Plague Doctor is an amazing anomaly. I mean, I really am enjoying the story and like how he came to be, how he was discovered, and what I really like about this one is most of the SCP anomalies that I was exposed to in the beginning, like the shy guy and the old man, they were all like class Keter, like very violent, very dangerous and things like that. But this one is more sentient, he's more cooperative, he's more aware, and he's very cooperative. So that's what I really like about this SCP anomaly. So I can see why this is one of my subscribers' favorite SCP Foundation anomaly. And I really liked it. So I do have one more video, but that thing is like an hour long, so I'm going to be watching it in a separate video. And it is about the Plague Doctor again. But anyways, that's all I got for today. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching these 2 videos. Hope you guys enjoyed them. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop more videos. And also shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support, guys. I really do appreciate it. So with anything else, I'll see you guys next time.